Hello everybody, CVH here, and once again, it's time to talk about the monthly reward card for the Elder Scrolls Legends, this time for the month of December, the last month in 2017, and as I usually do, without breaking tradition, let's take today's video and discuss the new card's pros, cons, and where it might see play in the meta. There we have it, Black Hand Messenger, the 3 Magicka 0/2 Assassin specific card. It's a Dark Elf, it has Drain and Summon, deal 2 damage to a creature, and Last Gasp, deal 2 damage to your opponent. First, I'd just like to say, I'm not exactly sure what happened with this picture. I did take it directly from Bethesda's official site in the developer article about the card. I think something crazy might have happened when cropping it, but it does look kind of cool without the border in some places, right? Anyway, we're making our way around and getting a class-specific monthly reward card for each of the classes, it would seem. And Assassin in particular could use some love in the class-specific card department. The current class-specific Assassin cards are Queen Baronzaya, Sadris Agent, and Assassin's Ritual. And besides the Queen, which is a fantastic card in virtually every Assassin deck you could play, Assassin's Ritual saw some initial hype, but has fallen off, and you don't really see it too much at all in Constructed, even though it's okay in Arena, as most cards are, and Sadris Agent much the same. It can see play in a Last Gasp Assassin here or there, but even in those, the Shawn Avenger typically takes priority, and Sadris Agent again doesn't see too much constructed play. So will Black Hand Messenger give Assassin another Assassin-specific card that you can actually play in competitive ladder decks? To answer that question, I think we have to talk about the value Black Hand Messenger brings to the table in comparison to some cards that do currently see constructed play. The card I think Black Hand Messenger most easily compares to for a quick and easy comparison is actually Firebolt. While Black Hand Messenger is a creature, it is a dark elf, it does share more things with a removal action than with most creatures. We see already it has a 3 Magicka 0/2 body, it has the stats of a makeshift defenses. Come on, that's not really doing too much on the board, but the effect is where this card shines. It clearly has a lot of utility. It has Drain and Summon, deal 2 damage to a creature. Basically, you're paying 3 Magicka to deal 2 damage to a creature and gain 2 life. And then, this card's ability to be a creature does lend itself to having a Last Gasp ability too. That is not an effect that happens when you play this card, like most actions just have one effect that happens, and then the action is in the discard pile, and the card is done with its uses. Black Hand Messenger can sit there, not doing too much on the board probably, but when it dies, the Last Gasp is going to deal 2 direct damage to your opponent, and then gain you 2 more life. So let's assume you don't need the direct damage to your opponent. Essentially, this card is going to deal 2 damage to a creature and gain you 4 life minimum, and that is assuming the Last Gasp ability eventually procs, and that part of the card is not immediate. So the immediate benefit is 2 damage to a creature, 2 life gained for you, and if the card is then allowed to trigger its Last Gasp, you're going to be gaining 2 more life and dealing 2 damage directly to your opponent, which may or may not be relevant. I think the majority of why this card would be good is because it acts as some removal, and also acts as some life gain. While it does cost 2 more Magicka than the Firebolt, you are getting life, which you aren't necessarily getting from the Firebolt. The Last Gasp direct damage could also matter, and also this card could potentially drain for more damage than the damage you're getting off of the abilities. It is a body. Granted, it is a body with 0 attack power, but that doesn't prevent you from attaching items to it. If you're playing this card in a deck that contains Crown Quartermaster or Daggerfall Mage, both of those creatures will be able to give you items throughout the stages of the game, or maybe you're just playing actual items already in your deck. Maybe you're playing Tome of Alterations themselves or Maces of Encumbrance. All of those are perfectly reasonable in various Assassin decks, and if you are playing those, Black Hand Messenger becomes an immediate removal action, so to speak, still, but the fact that it's going to be staying on the board and being an easy target for your opponent, maybe they don't want to deal with it. Maybe they don't want you to deal that 2 direct damage or gain 2 more life, and they think, okay, I'll just let the 0/2 survive forever. Well, then you could punish them by attaching an item to it and draining for more life. And there are other ways to take advantage of Black Hand Messenger too. This is a very, very ineffective body on the board, which might sound like a strict downside, but again, if we compare it to actions like Firebolt, obviously, if this card costed 1 Magicka, it would be absolutely insane, because it would just be strictly better Firebolt, and Firebolt's already one of the most efficient pieces of early removal in the game. If it cost 2 Magicka, that would be at least fair for an action. It would just be a deal 2 damage, gain 2 life, 2 Magicka action. that would be perfectly reasonable. Basically, we're adding one more cost to the Magicka from what that 2 Magicka action could be, and you're getting a free 0/2 body, which you can then abuse with items, but you're basically paying one more Magicka to have an easy activator also for cards like Soul Split and Cruel Firebloom, just things that might benefit from you having something weak on the board, sort of like how Marked Man's 0/2 Makeshift Defenses doesn't have much value by itself, but it's allowing you, in addition to the sort of mediocre body on the Marked Man, you wouldn't play a 1-cost 1/1 with no effect, and by itself the Makeshift Defenses isn't that good, but you can abuse that little 0-cost 0/2 with cards like 5th Legion Trainer or Clan Captain and Divine Fervor. Blackhand Messenger, sort of the same deal for different kinds of cards that appear in Assassin, cards that sacrifice your own creatures for a benefit. At the core, I do think just for the removal and the damage you're dealing and the health you're gaining, it is a little bit overcosted for what you're getting, but you are getting a high utility card which can combo with a lot of cards that exist in the game already. So we then have to look at what kind of decks might want to use Blackhand Messenger. And I think the place a lot of people went first glance was to Last Gasp Assassin, and that is the Assassin deck that utilizes a bunch of Last Gasp creatures along with Necrom Mastermind, which is currently one of the best ways to utilize those Last Gasps. It can allow you to trigger them multiple times before they actually die, and you can also use Dark Rebirth, which came out in Heroes of Skyrim, another fun support card for those styles of decks. The fact of the matter is, though, that that deck isn't really a solid part of the metagame, never has been, hopefully will be in the future. I think I've mentioned a few times that Necrom Mastermind is one of my favorite cards in Legends, but only having Necrom Mastermind and to a lesser extent a card like Dark Rebirth to support this archetype, along with the medium power level Soul Split and the slightly unreliable Cruel Firebloom, these cards don't necessarily always lend themselves to the most competitive of strategies. So will we find another tool for the deck in Blackhand Messenger? It depends on the style of Last Gasp Assassin. A lot of the ones that I've found to be more successful are the more aggressively oriented Last Gasp Assassins that have more similarities to a mid-range Assassin deck. And I don't really think anyone's going to be putting Blackhand Messenger in mid-range Assassin by itself. I think you'd just rather more efficient cards without worrying about a card that kind of requires a little bit of synergy to reach its true power level. That said, one of the first styles of Last Gasp Assassin was a slow Assassin deck utilizing Elusive Schemers and Altar of Despair, a deck that did tend to take the game a little bit later and just outvalue the opponents. And this card could just be, while not a tremendous value generating tool, a pretty decent removal action and an Altar of Despair, easy proc on that card. You can just sacrifice this card without worrying too much about it. Will it be the go-to 3-drop? It does compete with a lot of other 3-cost creatures in the game that are incredibly powerful. Some of the Last Gasps it competes with are Varanus Courier and House Kinsman, and some of the solid 3 costs it competes with that are used in other Assassin decks include Daggerfall Mage and Brotherhood Slayer. So I don't think it's really competing with the latter 2 cards I mentioned, but if you are going to go for a Last Gasp type of strategy, this could be the high utility card for you in the 3 Magicka slot. Overall, I like this card's design quite a bit. I think it's interesting, and I think we've probably only scratched the surface on what it's capable of. That being said, I would have liked to see an Assassin card reveal that did a little bit more for the class in general. I don't think this card is really changing the fact that Assassin doesn't have too many top-tier metagame decks now, and it's not really making an established archetype like mid-range Assassin, which is sort of on the cusp of being a real player in the meta, that much better. However, it does help decks that are a little bit weak in the meta right now, like the Altar of Despair Last Gasp Assassin, and maybe even the regular Last Gasp Assassin. Maybe with more tools like Soul Split and Cruel Firebloom that are a little bit more competitively viable, this card could eventually see play outside of a deck dedicated to sort of a gimmicky strategy. I like the card, I expected to see some amount of play, I just don't expect this card by itself to completely change the nature of a deck like Last Gasp Assassin, which unfortunately just isn't that good at the moment. Maybe in the future though. But as always, these are just my opinions, so if you have any thoughts on Blackhand Messenger and where you're excited to play and test the card at the beginning of January, feel free to leave a comment and let me know what you think. And as always, if you've enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more Legends content. Follow my stream in the description, and I'll see you next time.